What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actors finally decides he's had enough of a late-night host's relentless mockery? You won't believe what unfolds when Johnny Depp sits down with Jimmy Kimmel for what was supposed to be a routine promotional interview, only to deliver one of the most explosive confrontations in late-night television history. The tension that's been brewing for years between these two finally erupted in spectacular fashion, leaving audiences stunned and social media in absolute chaos. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when Hollywood civility completely breaks down on live television. The atmosphere in the Jimmy Kimmel Live studio felt different from the moment Johnny Depp walked onto the stage. While the audience erupted in their usual enthusiastic applause, there was something in Depp's demeanor that seasoned industry observers immediately picked up on. Gone was the playful, almost whimsical energy that had characterized his previous talk show appearances over the years. Instead, there was a steely determination in his eyes, a set to his jaw that suggested this wasn't going to be another light-hearted promotional chat. Kimmel, seemingly oblivious to the shift in energy, launched into his opening with his trademark smug confidence. "Johnny Depp, everybody! Looking good, looking like you've had quite the interesting few years," he said with that familiar smirk that had become his signature. The audience laughed, but Depp's expression remained unchanged. He settled into the guest chair with deliberate precision, his rings catching the studio lights as he adjusted his jacket. "Jimmy," Depp acknowledged with a nod that was more formal than friendly. The single word carried weight that seemed to surprise even Kimmel, though the host quickly masked it with his practiced television persona. "So, Johnny, you're here to talk about your latest project, but I have to ask, and I think everyone's wondering, how does it feel to be back in the spotlight after everything that's happened? I mean, we've all been following the legal drama, the tabloid headlines." Kimmel's voice carried that particular tone he reserved for when he thought he was being cleverly provocative. The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Depp's fingers drummed once against the armrest of his chair before he leaned forward slightly. "You know, Jimmy, I came here tonight to discuss my work, my art, the projects I'm passionate about. But it seems like every interview I do these days, people are more interested in dissecting my personal life than celebrating creativity." Well, when your personal life becomes as public as yours has, it kind of becomes fair game, doesn't it? Kimmel shot back with that characteristic laugh that never quite reached his eyes. "I mean, come on. You can't expect people to just ignore the elephant in the room." There was a noticeable shift in Depp's posture. His shoulders squared, and for the first time since sitting down, he made direct, unwavering eye contact with his host. "The elephant in the room, Jimmy. Is that what we're calling it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks more like a host who's built his entire brand on punching down at people when they're already dealing with enough." The audience fell silent. This wasn't the playful banter they were accustomed to seeing on late-night television. This was something much more raw, much more real. Kimmel's smile faltered for just a moment before he tried to regain control of the situation with another laugh. "Hey now, that's a little harsh, don't you think? I'm just doing my job here. People tune in to hear about what's happening in Hollywood, and you, my friend, have been happening quite a bit lately." "Your job," Depp repeated slowly, his voice carrying a dangerous edge that made the studio audience shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Your job is to entertain people, Jimmy. But somewhere along the way, you seem to have confused entertainment with humiliation. There's a difference between comedy and cruelty, though I'm not sure you understand that distinction anymore." The tension in the studio was now palpable. Camera operators were getting tighter shots, sensing that something significant was unfolding. Kimmel, clearly not expecting this level of pushback, tried to deflect with humor. "Wow, okay, somebody's feeling a little sensitive tonight. Look, Johnny, if you can't handle a little good-natured ribbing, maybe late-night television isn't the place for you." That comment would prove to be the spark that ignited everything that followed. Depp's expression darkened, and when he spoke again, his voice was quieter but infinitely more menacing. Good-natured ribbing? Is that what you call the months of jokes about my personal struggles? The constant mockery of things that nearly destroyed my life and career? Jimmy, there's nothing good-natured about kicking someone when they're down, and that's exactly what you've been doing. Kimmel's face was beginning to show cracks in his composed facade. The easy confidence he'd walked onto the stage with was starting to evaporate as he realized this wasn't going according to script. Look, Johnny, comedy is supposed to push boundaries. That's what comedians do. We comment on current events, on celebrities, on the news. If you can't handle that, don't, Depp interrupted, his voice cutting through Kimmel's words like a blade. Don't you dare try to hide behind the comedian excuse. I've worked with real comedians, Jimmy. I've worked with people who understand that there's an art to humor, a skill to making people laugh without making someone else cry. What you do isn't comedy. It's cruelty with a punchline. The studio had never been quieter. Even the production crew seemed frozen, uncertain whether they should intervene or let this unprecedented moment continue to unfold. Kimmel was visibly struggling now, his usual arsenal of quick comebacks seemingly depleted in the face of Depp's unflinching honesty. But as the commercial break approached, it became clear that this was only the beginning. The real fireworks were yet to come, and Johnny Depp was just getting started. When they returned from the break, the atmosphere in the studio had somehow become even more charged. The brief intermission had done nothing to cool the tension between the two men. If anything, it seemed to have given Depp time to gather his thoughts and prepare for what would become an even more devastating assault on Kimmel's character and credibility. "Welcome back to Jimmy Kimmel Live," the host said, his voice noticeably less confident than it had been earlier in the show. "We're here with Johnny Depp, and we were just having a spirited discussion about comedy and boundaries." He attempted his trademark smirk, but it came across as forced and uncomfortable. Depp hadn't moved during the commercial break. He sat in the same position, leaning slightly forward, his intense gaze never leaving Kimmel's face. "Spirited discussion," he repeated with a bitter laugh. "Is that what we're calling it? Jimmy, let me tell you what I think is really happening here. I think you've gotten so comfortable hiding behind your desk, making jokes at other people's expense, that you've forgotten there are real human beings on the receiving end of your punchlines." The audience was completely silent now, sensing that they were witnessing something unprecedented in late-night television history. Kimmel shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his hands fidgeting with his note cards. "Johnny, look, I think you're taking this way too personally," Kimmel said, attempting to regain some semblance of control. "Every celebrity gets roasted a little bit. It comes with the territory. You're acting like I personally attacked you. Or something." Depp's laugh was cold and humorless. "Personally attacked me? Jimmy, for months, you turned my lowest moments into your highest-rated segments. While I was fighting for my reputation, my career, my life, you were getting laughs by making me the butt of your jokes. You took a man's pain and turned it into your profit." "That's not fair," Kimmel protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "I make jokes about everyone. Politicians, celebrities, public figures. It's what late-night hosts do. You can't expect special treatment just because you're going through a rough patch." "Special treatment?" Depp's voice rose slightly, and for the first time genuine anger flashed in his eyes. "Jimmy, I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for basic human decency. There's a difference between commenting on someone's public actions and reveling in their personal destruction. You crossed that line a long time ago." Kimmel was now visibly sweating under the studio lights. His usual arsenal of deflection and humor was proving useless against Depp's relentless honesty. "Look, Johnny, if I offended you, that wasn't my intention. Comedy is subjective. What's funny to some people might not be funny to others." "Offended me?" Depp leaned back in his chair, shaking his head slowly. Jimmy, you didn't offend me. You tried to destroy me. There's a difference. When someone is already down, already struggling, already fighting for their life and livelihood, and you decide to pile on for the sake of a few laughs, that's not comedy. That's cowardice. The word cowardice hung in the air like a challenge. Kimmel's face flushed red, and for the first time in the interview, he looked genuinely angry rather than just uncomfortable. Cowardice? Are you kidding me right now? I've built a career on speaking truth to power, on calling out hypocrisy wherever I see it. Speaking truth to power? Depp's voice was incredulous. Jimmy, you don't speak truth to power. You speak lies to vulnerability. You punch down, not up. When's the last time you took on someone who could actually fight back? When's the last time you used your platform to challenge someone who had more power than you instead of someone who had less? The accusation hit its mark. Kimmel's mouth opened and closed several times as he struggled to find a response. The studio audience was now completely captivated, watching what had become less of an interview and more of a public reckoning. You know what the really sad part is, Jimmy? Depp continued, his voice taking on an almost pitying tone. You used to be better than this. There was a time when your comedy came from cleverness, from wit, from actual talent. But somewhere along the way, you discovered it was easier to get laughs by being cruel than by being creative. And now that's all you know how to do. Kimmel's hands were shaking now. Whether from anger or humiliation, it was impossible to tell. You don't know what you're talking about, he said, but his voice was weak, defensive. You don't know anything about what it takes to do this job, to keep an audience entertained night after night. Don't I? Depp's eyes narrowed. Jimmy, I've been entertaining people for decades. I've made them laugh, made them cry, made them think, made them feel. And I've never once had to tear another person down to build myself up. That's the difference between an artist and a bully. Artists create, bullies destroy. The word bully seemed to physically impact Kimmel. He recoiled as if he'd been slapped, his face cycling through emotions, anger, shame, defensiveness, and something that looked almost like recognition. I am not a bully, he said quietly, but even as the words left his mouth, they sounded hollow, unconvincing even to himself. Depp studied him for a long moment before responding. Jimmy, when you use your platform, your audience, your power to systematically mock and humiliate someone who's already struggling, what would you call that? When you turn someone's pain into your punchline, night after night, what is that if not bullying? The silence that followed was deafening. For perhaps the first time in his television career, Jimmy Kimmel was completely speechless. And in that silence, Johnny Depp delivered what would become the most devastating blow of the entire confrontation. You know what the truly tragic part is, Jimmy? Depp's voice was quiet now, but it carried more weight than if he had been shouting. You had a choice. Every single night you had a choice. You could have used your platform to lift people up, to bring joy without bringing others down, to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. But you chose the easy path. You chose cruelty because it was convenient. Kimmel's face had gone pale. The sweat on his forehead was now visible to the cameras, and his hands gripped the edge of his desk so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Johnny, I think maybe we should— No, Depp cut him off sharply. We're not done here. You wanted to put me on your show. You wanted to drag my personal life into your comedy routine. So now you get to hear what I really think. For years, I stayed quiet. I took it. I let you and others like you make jokes about my struggles, my failures, my pain. I told myself it was just part of being in the public eye. But sitting here now, looking at you, I realized something. The studio was so quiet you could hear the hum of the cameras. Even the production crew had stopped moving, transfixed by what was unfolding before them. What I realize, Depp continued, his voice gaining strength, is that staying silent doesn't make you noble. It makes you complicit. By not speaking up, By not calling out behavior like yours, I enabled it. I allowed you to think it was acceptable to treat people this way. Well, I'm done being silent." Kimmel tried once more to regain control of the situation. "Johnny, look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot here. Why don't we start over, talk about your new project?" "My new project?" Depp laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Jimmy, my new project is making sure people understand the difference between entertainment and exploitation. My new project is calling out people who hide behind comedy to justify their cruelty. My new project is you." The words hit Kimmel like physical blows. He slouched back in his chair, looking smaller somehow, diminished. The confident, smug host who had started the show was nowhere to be seen. In his place sat a man who had been thoroughly exposed, his carefully constructed persona crumbling in real time. "You see, Jimmy, the thing about bullies is that they only have power when their victims stay quiet. The moment someone stands up to them, the moment someone refuses to be intimidated or humiliated, that power evaporates. And right now, in front of your audience, in front of your cameras, I'm taking that power away from you." Depp stood up from his chair, his movement fluid and deliberate. The action seemed to break whatever spell had held the studio in silence. There was a collective intake of breath from the audience as they realized what was about to happen. "For months, you made me the punchline of your jokes. You took the lowest points of my life and turned them into your highest-rated segments. You profited from my pain, and you did it with a smile on your face and applause in your ears. But here's what you never understood, Jimmy. I'm not just some celebrity for you to mock. I'm a human being. I'm someone's father, someone's friend, someone who has feelings and dignity and the right to be treated with basic respect." Kimmel was now completely silent, staring up at Depp with something that looked like genuine fear in his eyes. The tables had turned completely. The hunter had become the hunted, and everyone in the studio could feel it. "You know what's going to happen now, Jimmy?" Depp asked, his voice carrying an ominous certainty. "People are going to see this. They're going to see you for what you really are. Not a comedian, not an entertainer, but a bully who got his comeuppance. They're going to see that behind all your jokes and your smugness and your fake charm. You're just a coward who picks on people who can't fight back." Depp began walking toward the edge of the stage, but he wasn't done talking. His voice carried clearly through the studio's sound system as he delivered his final verdict. "The really beautiful thing about moments like this, Jimmy, is that they reveal truth. All the makeup, all the lighting, all the editing in the world can't hide what just happened here. Your audience just watched you get exposed as exactly what you are, and they're never going to see you the same way again." He paused at the edge of the stage, turning back one final time to look at Kimmel, who remained frozen in his chair, speechless and defeated. "Oh, and Jimmy? Next time you want to make jokes about someone's personal struggles, maybe ask yourself this question first. What if it was your family? What if it was your children watching someone mock their father's pain for entertainment? What if it was you sitting in that guest chair having the worst moments of your life turned into someone else's comedy gold?" The question hung in the air like a final judgment. Kimmel's mouth opened as if to respond, but no words came out. He had been completely and utterly destroyed, not by shouting or theatrics, but by simple, devastating truth. "I came here tonight thinking maybe, just maybe, you'd surprise me. Maybe you'd show some growth, some maturity, some recognition of the harm you've caused. But you're exactly who I thought you were, and now everyone else knows it too." With that, Johnny Depp walked off the Jimmy Kimmel Live stage, leaving behind a stunned audience, a humiliated host, and a moment that would be replayed and discussed for years to come. The cameras continued rolling, capturing Kimmel's complete inability to respond, his face a mixture of shock, shame, and the dawning realization that his career would never quite recover from what had just transpired. As Depp disappeared backstage, the studio remained in absolute silence. Jimmy Kimmel, The man who had built his career on having the last word, the final punchline, the ultimate comeback, sat speechless at his desk, thoroughly and completely defeated by an actor who had simply refused to be a victim any longer. The show cut to commercial, but the damage was done. In less than 30 minutes, Johnny Depp had accomplished something that years of criticism and controversy had failed to achieve. He had stripped away Jimmy Kimmel's facade and revealed the truth underneath. And that truth, broadcast live to millions of viewers, would change everything.